I'm at one of the most advanced agroforestry systems that I've seen in all of Europe, here with Felipe.
Very nice to have you here.
It's been a pleasure. This is one of what I see as one of the most cutting-edge agroforestry farms and projects, but not just for the systems themselves, but also for the vision behind what's happening here, the team, and what's being created. Felipe, you have been doing this work for nearly 20 years alongside Ernst, and this work has taken you from Brazil to here in the south of Italy. It's been a pleasure. We've been connecting over the last few days.
Yes.
I'm really impressed. These are the systems that, to me, have been the best demonstration of this practice, especially in a Mediterranean climate. It's tough, and what we're going to do is we're going to sit down here and we're going to explore a little bit about the why behind what's happening here at this project, Amadeco. Then we're going to dive into each of the 4 kinds of systems they have here on the farm, small scale up to big scale, and then we're going to sit back down and look at the invisible structures that make this project so interesting and unique. You said that this project attracted you to do it here because it's like a mini apocalypse.
Yes.
What does that mean?
No, it means that, the same way when we came to Europe, we came to this place that you also visit, Mertola, and there
Portugal.
they had, in Portugal, where they had a similar situation as well. The soils were super degraded, the climate had been reclassified and rain diminished, and problems with the population, with lack of water. So this climate apocalypse, it's already happening there. It's not something that they foresee in the future, they're waiting for. It's there. And so these places always interest us a lot because we believe like working with successional agroforestry, syntropic approach is the way of doing this. Using the dynamics of the Mediterranean forest in order to create conditions to have even agriculture again. We were working there and also had a nice experience living with our friends in the south of Spain, in the La Loma Viva, with Ryan and Karen. I had been friends with Jan Gisbert, which is one of the owners of this place. He wanted to buy an area here because he likes the region. And he said, Felipe, you guys, when I buy this land, you need to come to see, and I think it's going to be perfect for the Syntropic approach. And the more we studied about the place, the more it always, these conditions were being met. Because here is also a mini apocalypse, because we are in an infected zone of this phytosanitary crisis that was attributed to a bacteria called Xylella fastidiosa that creates a syndrome of fast desiccation of the olives. And that changed completely the region. So it's been a tragedy. It's been not only an ecological tragedy and economical tragedy because people lost, the way of living, the farmers, but also in the level of the landscape, because people lost the identity that they had with the place where they grew up with. When we arrived, 0.1 organic matter in the soil. We have salinized water, so very limited conditions. And in the middle of an infected zone that it was focused on olives only. In the past, tobacco, but the tobacco didn't produce anymore. And then and olives, and some olives ancient. Here I would still recommend people to visit where they are still alive. Between Brindisi and Bari. And they are beautiful, they're monumental trees, but the disease is kind of still spreading. And so this was interesting for us because the place, and especially young people, young farmers that wanted to do something and not only feel like apathic or they have to leave this place. Because this started to happen in the south of Italy. And so there is this diaspora already, and people leave the south to go to the north. And we said, no, that is a place where we can try to do something nice. And not only think about new ways of producing food, but also to perceive and interpret the landscape, giving also new aesthetical, framing in a new aesthetical way.
And that's something that they do really well. If you've seen their Instagram, very aesthetic. So you like a challenge, and I think the summary of why you've chosen this mini apocalyptic area is because it's relevant to probably a huge, the most proportion of people on the planet who are farmers, right? Degraded soils, impending disease pressure, if not already apparent disease pressure, kind of collapsing like social foundations when agriculture is being like undermined in these ways,
Yes.
right? Poor soil, increasingly challenging climate, water, like all these things. You've chosen this challenging place. You haven't just gone somewhere with like really nice, rich, fertile soil. How are things going here? You've been here since...
No, it's been now 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And we are in one area that is where we began. I mean, it's a small area, but where we began. No, things are going amazingly well. And I guess the confidence that we get through the years is that really working with life, working with succession, working with plants that can grow and slowly, trusting the process, it will eventually rebuild fertility. And here, for example, is quite particular because we are on the Adriatic side. We have a winter that is almost the same winter as the center Portugal upwards. And we have a summer that is from the south of Portugal, south of Spain.
So
we have 45
extremes.
degrees. And sometimes I have a recording on my phone when we have this extreme hot days, 46, 47 degrees, like a perceived heat. And also we have at least one day of snow. This past year we have 30 centimeters of hail, and we have frost after frost after frost. Even 1 month ago we had frost. And so this is, so again, it's similar plants, but they behave differently here. So plants that grew very quickly for example, in Portugal or in Spain, here they grew slower. So we have some information, but there is also a lot to learn and to know as we move. And that's why, here, for example, we put a lot, very densely and with a lot of varieties of plants and diversity. So it could be our classroom to understand what would grow well so we could move to the bigger areas.
And so 2015, this beautiful film drops on the internet, Life in Syntropy. Most people have probably seen it. And you were involved in the creation of that process.
Yes.
What's brought you over the last 20 years to where we are now? I know, tough
Okay,
question.
I'll try to summarize it. Well, Diana and I do this work with Diana. We are partners in work and partners in life. And we are journalists before everything. And when we met Ernest and his work, it was a completely new way of interpreting ecological relationships, and with a very practical outcome that was for us the strength of this approach. And so, being from the communication as well, we wanted to understand what it takes to increase adoption. That's what you're doing as well. And so, in order to do that responsibly, we needed to work in the scientific front, and that's what we did. We did a master, Diana did her PhD in the topics, and trying to anchor, many of the Ernest statements and what his interpretation anchor in scientific theories, and to put especially the name that he created into that he launched in 2013 as a Syntropic agriculture, to being this unique and connected to his work, and so we had this scientific interest because we needed to put this to dialogue with the other forms in this so diverse and sometimes chaotic universe of sustainable regenerative practices. And
well, because otherwise what? Otherwise the terminology syntropic just gets lost in
Yes,
fairyland.
exactly.
It's not anchored in any quote unquote.
Precisely, and that was really a concern as well, because since it is just the Syntropic approach is not like a set of rules, or it's not like a certification, it's not a brand, it's just like a set of eyes with which you perceive and interpret ecosystem relationships and adapt to your decision-making process. And that is really, really important. That's why we say it's not, the technique is easy after you internalize the concepts. But internalizing the concepts is the part that it takes more. And we always believe that it is so important to internalize the concepts, because once you run into a crisis, and you will run into many crises, and we run into many crises when the system is not performing as wish, or now there is something missing, there is a gap in space and in time. You know, if we know well the decision-making process, if you haven't internalized the concepts, it's very easy to fall back into the existing previous paradigm. And so the decision-making is it's much more important than the...
That's something you said over the last few days that I really resonated with. You said that syntropic agroforestry, syntropic agriculture isn't a syntropic design. It's not a particular way of planting. It's not even like, you can't have a syntropic property. You can't.
Yes.
It's not about the things in the ground. It's about like management decisions. It's about your decision-making process. And you can have a beautifully planted system with poor decision-making process, and it's not, the syntropic dynamic isn't there.
Exactly, and I think that is really cool because Ernest, he's asked this question a lot. I mean, and he always says people want recipes, and it's not a recipe, it's a way of doing it. And he always says, I mean, the syntropicality, if we have to put this way, is not on the land itself, is on the farmer. I mean, she needs to understand, I mean, the decision-making process and how to organize the system. And so that's why, I mean, Diane and I, we devoted a lot of, because also it was what draw us a lot to this, because we were so interested in the philosophical part, in the ecological concepts that were kind of challenging the status quo, and we wanted to test if that sustains itself. And that's why we went to also, I mean, to the university. I mean, to go back to school and as a researcher at this point, and we did our thesis having as a central object the philosophy, precisely this decision-making process. It was not a trial. I mean, you know, like let's build a case study and like measure what's going to happen, what's happening in the soil. No, we were fortunate enough to do our research in an interdisciplinary program, and so we really could put the concepts in the center of the work. And in order to do that, going back to your questions, we wanted to study, but in order to be responsible with what we were saying, and also because we love doing this, we needed to practice as well. So we always try to find a balance between the studying that we love and also the practice that makes everything more concrete and real and part of our lives. And that builds and help to build our ethos as well, I mean, and our praxis, and defines our careers in the end. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. What are we going to see when we walk around here?
Okay, we're going to see, I mean, here in this place, I mean, we did 4 different designs, I mean, for different purposes as well. I mean, because as I said here, one of these problems is like young people, they're trying to live. I mean, for example, this area where we are now is 2,000 square meters. So we wanted to show that, and this is the reality of many backyards that people have around. It's not uncommon for people to have access to this size of land. And here we have over, I mean, almost 90 fruit trees, and we harvest a lot of tomatoes. We have a lot of vegetables in the beginning and very little water. So I think, and also this was built as a garden style, but was with many landscape aspects. Mm-hmm. And so this was really aimed to show, to find something that it could be beautiful, but also useful, I mean, to harvest, not only those gardens that you know, you
ornamental.
See, yeah, you take pictures, it's nice and very energy like demanding, but with no harvest. And so it would be more this interactive garden that people could come and eat, and especially here in the Mediterranean, the paradise of aromatic plants. So it's almost like aromatherapy when we work with those plants. So this is the situation. Then we have another one that is a similar size, a little bit bigger than this, but we did a design for vegetable production in arid conditions like this. So adding much more plants and doing a design like on purpose and almost like as a provocative, with a provocative intention, to show that in the drier the place, the more plants we need to put to have our vegetables. That is our system over there. That is also very packed, very dense.
And I like the newest update of that system where you're saying it's a single, well, we'll take a look, but it's like a single line of vegetables just smushed between these two hedgerows of aromatics.
Yeah, no, yes, we definitely discussed that. I think it's and it's working well. And then we did the fruteto, which was an idea to embrace the traditions, because it was originally a 10 by 10 olive field, and where most of the olives already died, and they took them away. And but we wanted to honor this tradition, so we kept this density of 100 plants per hectare, but we added a lot of fruits in the middle. I mean, that is the most also. It's a place that we have more to talk about failures, because things that didn't went too well. Also the most challenging place, and also, I mean, challenging implementation that it's sometimes happens. And because there, since it's eradicated the olives, so they were doing, I mean, the previous owners or previous people, they were doing grain, like a grain cultivation, and so the place was really more exhausted. And the other design that we have is one that is, I mean, I think it's coming out very nicely, and it has also a very nice input from Ernest. Also, he challenged and provoked this idea of having olive trees very close together as almost like a hedgerow, but not in a monoculture, of course, but in a multi-layer, in a very diverse successional system. There it was a 12 by 12 olive system, where the olives are still there with the local variety, and we wanted just to enrich this place and also add fruits and complete the system with the whole dynamics of the Mediterranean. So yeah, and I think that design is quite nice.
So how does what you're doing here at this project at Amadeco, how does this translate to other areas even beyond the Mediterranean? Because you're talking about, you know, the tradition here was 10 by 10 olives, and we wanted to incorporate that into this next iteration. How does what you're doing here apply to other climates and other parts of the world where it's maybe not these exact conditions, but the framework, the mental framework that you guys are bringing of, you know, what is the traditional agriculture look like? What are the existing conditions? What's happening?
Yeah, you know, I think that it touches the subject of adoption. You know, when we need to be, sometimes we can't be radical, and we need to be flexible to understand where our entry point is. And if we did something completely that people couldn't understand, or super like out of their imagination, and then it creates more barriers to adoption. And so we try to keep, as we were discussing the other day, I mean, almost in like a semiotic theory, that's to have some redundancy and some noise.
The noise and signal.
Yes, noise and signal ratio. And so
noise is like new information that's unfamiliar, and signal is something that people understand. It's finding that balance between what is understood already and what is new information to build on.
Yeah, precisely. And I think we can see this, and it was on purpose. For example, this place like that is much more dense and diverse. This is a lot of noise for people that are, you know, more traditional way of doing, but it is good because they see a lot of noise. But when they go there and they see the straight lines, you know, and I mean the olives, and they understand. I mean, and so they start to connect the dots. And we perceived, and we are happy with that the overall educational purpose as well, on top of the other stuff, but the educational arm of this project works as well, because in the end we try to make people connect the dots, because the principles are the same. I mean, we are working with stratification, we are working with succession, we want more plants in the lower layer, a little bit less, I mean, as we move upwards, and a lot of pruning, and a lot of, I mean, everything. But they are organized in a different way. When we are working in other people's lands, like this is the case, and we want to show, or to I don't know, to at least for young, I mean, especially for young people, to give them options that they could take care, because here there's a lot of abandoned land. I mean, if you go around, it's a lot of abandoned land. So it needs to be something that they they can understand. And so that's why we built this in this way, to try to facilitate adoption in the end. But it also goes back to what we were discussing. It's not a recipe. We need to fill the place. We need to understand what our entry point is. So we put a lot of thought in each, not only individual design, but the complex as well. I mean, how these 4 designs, they communicate to one another. And we won't stop there. I mean, we still want to do another design for grapes. I mean, in Vita Maritata, grapes in the stratified systems. And there's still space for another one. That the idea will still come. So it is a puzzle that we are putting together, and to become like also a showcase of possibilities, for this region.
Yeah, and I think as you were saying that, something clicked in my head that hadn't before, but with the signal to noise ratio, each of these different systems going from this like slightly more complex, more noisy signal for some, over then the transition to the really straight line, more simple system, it provides a diversity of entry points, as you say, for different people, of different familiarities, of different experiences to come and be pulled into this world.
Yeah, and something that for us it was also something that we perceived back there, because when we did Life in Syntropy and From Forest to Garden, it was like one video before, we understood that the whole movement that was happening in Brasilia, for example, with Joan, with Romulo, that they were doing like also Ernest was as a mentor, like those lines, tree lines and the vegetable beds in the middle. That was also a revolution, because before, when it was more like this forest patch, it's of course it's amazing, it works fantastically well, but on the other hand, when you start to put in lines, and that was very, and they organized a lot of farmers together, and so it created a kind of a movement in that area, and people could relate more, because they could perceive that as an agricultural area and not a forest area, and so it helped the communication and it helped adoption, because through that they also I got to know the other parts, and that I think is and that kind of stuck with us.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the branding of this project later. Maybe we'll find Alessandro and the communications team, but I think that's also a huge strong point of what's happening here at Amadeco, because it's a different, you mentioned that when you guys kind of initiated the Life in Syntropy video, that was a video and a project that was very different than a lot of the previous communications about syntropic agroforestry. And the idea was to frame it differently, right? Rather than this maybe like, non-serious hippie thing, it was something that was taking the communications to a different level to allow it to reach more people potentially. And I think that the same is happening here with this project at Amadeco.
Yes, coming from the communication, we strongly believe that communicating is part of the strategy as well, because we don't, in all agricultural crises that exist, in all agricultural civilizations for the past 10,000 years almost, there were alternatives. There were alternative farmers that were doing amazing work, but they were not strong enough to win the dominant model. And again, it's not different. All the regenerative practices, and this is one of those. And so we always had this idea that if we want this kind of vision and approach to be like a dominant approach and not alternative, we need to bridge some gaps. We need to talk to people that, and it needs to touch people that are not aware of it. And so we can't, and you know that as a communicator, we can't think only, of course we need to know our audience, but we need to add elements that can increase, open more the bubble until it bursts, and reach other people. And we were happy to see, when we did the Life in Syntropy, it was very intentional to have a different language, a different set of colors, a different rhythm. That's something that you do very well in a very updated version, and which I'm very happy about. And so we in the end, we reached people that first they wouldn't. I mean, it was a wall that blocked them for seeing that, because the way of the communication, they just didn't resonate with that kind of universe. And so we try to show, no, this can be useful and can be an approach that is applied in many other situations. And so, I mean, with Life in Syntropy and with the work that's after in scientific work, and also I have to thank many previous students of Ernest that since the late 90s, they did also very nice in scientific work. We surfed more at the beginning of internet and videos and stuff, and so it's in the end it increased the reach of this. And Life in Syntropy was very fortunate because it also it became an international thing. So we and we didn't have that intention, because we thought it was something that was very relevant in Brazil, but in the end we found out that it was relevant worldwide. And we were very happy.
Well, millions of views on YouTube will,
yes,
will validate that.
We weren't expecting that, but yeah, but we were really happy.
Yeah, yeah. Let's take a look around these systems.
Of course.
This is incredible. We're exploring each of the 4 systems now. We're starting at the Giardino. What does Giardino mean?
It's the garden. It's precisely, I mean, this is our first classroom, is where we wanted to put all the plants that we could do, so it's very diverse, it's very dense, because it is a place that we would test which plants and which varieties of plants would perform well, so we could then transport to the bigger areas. And we have a very, and also we have an affection relationship with this place. We love to be here because there was nothing when we arrived. There was really poor. There was a hedgerow of dying trees near the wall, and we transformed those trees into wood paths, and here we created nests, because also we wanted to break the lines. I mean, to show there was a lot of aesthetical purposes here. So we have nests every 3 meters with a fruit tree, and in the connection we add emergent trees and all the other ones, and the lower layers. And it was funny because when we were putting this, people around were saying, "No, but it's too close." And every time they were complaining, they say, "Okay, then we'll add more." I mean, just as a provocation, we'll add more, add more. As a nice provocation, we added the eucalypts, although here in Italy they are much more gentle with eucalypt. They don't have this strong prejudice against it. I mean, underneath each eucalypt we add like oak trees. I mean, here there is one that is coming so beautiful. I mean, and all the aromatics. I mean, this is where we tried not only different species, but also different varieties within the species of the aromatic plants. I mean, the aromatic plants here in the Mediterranean, they work as the grasses in our tropics, the perennial grasses. I mean, plants that we prune and they return, and during the summer, they are the ones that they really, you know, they do the photosynthesis, they cover the soils, they are protecting the soils. So they are really important. And many Mediterranean, that part of the Mediterranean forests, which for us it's really important as well. We wanted to show people this concept that it's very famous to say that's regeneration by use, which is here we have more species of the Mediterranean forests than reforestation projects in the Mediterranean. For example, the corbezzolo, which is like the strawberry trees, and then we have Sambucus nigra, and all the other aromatics, melissa, salvia, ruta. And here, for example, we have another kind of oak. This is the Quercia roverella. And then we have the fruit trees, again, every 3 meters, and the poplars. And here, for example, the eucalypt, and with the Quercus ilex that is so beautiful, growing well, and we joke that, I mean, it's really eucalypt and a seed of oak tree underneath, and they say, but how close? I mean, it's actually 0 centimeter. If you see, I mean, it's really, they come from absolutely the same spot. I mean, very, very close together. And here the Pistacia lentiscus as well, which is an element of this of the Mediterranean forests.
This is an area where you first began. It was the smallest area, it was kind of off to the side, starting with high diversity to just trial, see what works well, what are the dynamics to be able to expand intelligently later. Now we're also mentioning you've got these eucalyptus, the poplar, some of the species that maybe in some areas have worse reputations than others, but generally eucalyptus aren't appreciated and aren't understood in a context of fruit trees, gardens, and reforestation especially. It has this connotation of being a water pump, it has this understanding of it's going to dry the soil out, it's going to kill your soil, it's going to make it allelopathic, it's going to do all this damage. How could you get away with doing it? Don't. What's the biotic pump and how does that relate to what the eucalypt is doing as a function here, but as part of a system?
Well, I mean, I can tell it also as a student, because I mean, if I was to, I'm not like a deeper expert, so I can tell in a thing. But you know, the thing that it at least it connects with the idea of the biotic pump, because since we plant in layers, and so it's really the aim here is to increase photosynthesis per unit area, and then in the syntropic approach predicts that in the systems. So not only to plant in layers and increase photosynthesis per unit area, but also predict the succession of those species. So it increases the overall transpiration of the place. So by increasing overall transpiration of the place, so it creates zones of low air pressure, and in contrast with zones with high air pressure, like the oceans, the water bodies. So it creates this pump. So it sucks humidity into the continents. Of course, I mean, this is a very small area, so it doesn't trigger the biotic pump, but the scientists of the biotic pump, and we are very fortunate to collaborate with them, they precisely build models to think how large an area should be and where to begin to start reforestation projects, and based on at least this kind of approach. I mean, to have really stratified and to maximize photosynthesis per unit area. And so even like the eucalypt is, yes, and because of their like a plant that is so it's a polemical plant, and we plant it on purpose as well, and that's why we have an oak tree here, just to prove that it's not like a competition. And in Brazil it happens so many times as well, to use eucalypt to help establish more climax and difficult species. It grows well in degraded places, of course, and it's not native, but the level of degradation of this place is not native either. I mean, the places like this in the Mediterranean, it's not native to have like a plowed fire every year or twice a year, and having the monocultures of olives or monocultures of tobacco. So it's not natural of these ecosystems either. And so we, nonetheless, the native species like the oak forest that once dominated this whole region, the climax species, they grow under the protection of fast growing ones. This famous thing that they takes water, this is the monoculture problem, it's not the eucalypt problem, because when it is combined with layers of vegetation, it does quite the opposite. It brings water to the place, it has a fast metabolism, so that's why everybody likes, I mean, and we use, I mean, as Ernest says, I mean, if eucalypt had a lawyer, it would just sue everyone, because we use eucalypts every day. I mean, when we go to the toilet, when we write, when we print, when we wipe our faces, and we should be a little bit more generous and comprehensive with the plant, and understand the ecophysiology of the plant, and the possibilities that exist with the plant. So the problem is not the eucalypt, the problem is that we are not adding companions to the eucalypt, and we are not adding succession. And eucalyptus is so generous that is considered to be a fast-growing secondary plant, but it can transit to climax as long as there is no other plant to replace its position. And so here we have, we put the next generation, and we hope in a few years they will tell us that eucalypt, as Ernest says, will thank for its work, and it will just leave the system. And we want in the future to have this evergreen oak to make the protection, I mean, to protect the citrus. Today is an evergreen eucalypt, and in the future will be an evergreen oak, because the citrus here, they like a protection because it's too cold. And you know what? Citrus is very appreciated in Italy, in the south, and it's not from here either. It's from Asia.
And so that's going to be a pattern that we're going to see a lot of over all the systems. Is we're going to see the eucalypts, we're going to see the diversity, and them supporting that more climax ecosystem. Now, because this was the first area, the Jardin, what were some of the key takeaways, whether it was in terms of layout, species selection, or management, that you guys were then able to apply into the future systems?
We realized one of the most fast-growing plants that we have and covers the soil very quickly is the salvia. I mean, this, and it's really, it loves this place. I mean, so this is the first one that we use. I mean, here is a very dominated, all the soil is very dominated with a kind of grass that is a, they call it the gramínea, is a chyperus. It's the weed that grows everywhere. And then plant salvia, the problem is solved.
Salvia, the
sage, sorry.
Sage.
Yes,
yeah.
It is the sage. I mean, so it is the first one that we know that likes the place and likes to be in cooperation with the rosemary. They belong to the same family. And you see here, for example, I mean, here, I mean, this place this year we didn't we almost did nothing here because we were so busy establishing the other area. And I think that was also a very good information for us, because even though we kind of let the aromatics take over, because in the previous 2 years we did more like a heavy pruning to have more biomass and to give a boost of growth in all the plants. And this year we kind of, okay, we can't just let just leave it. And I couldn't be happier with also the result and the protection and everything that those plants are doing. And these trees, they were in a horrible shape when we arrived, and the health, the visible health it's really increasing year by year. At this point, for example, 2 years ago, there will be already full of aphids, and you see, I mean, now it's really fine.
Some of these trees, the citrus, I think, were the only trees that were in this area. They were
there were 6 or 7.
Okay,
yeah.
So 6 or 7 citrus, really poor health, and otherwise just bare landscape that you've then come in, retrofitted, and added more diversity.
Yes. And also some other information that we had. For example, this one. This is a wonderful, I mean, the Artemisia absinthe. It is a fantastic nursery. I mean, you can put the Artemisia, it grows very quickly as well, you see in the other area. And you can put whatever tree you want underneath, I mean, the slow-growing ones. And actually, it served as a professor to understand which trees like to be in the shade as when they were really younger. But it doesn't like very strong pruning. Here we did very systematically, I mean, to prune things in February or beginning of March, when the trees, I mean, it was the movement of regrowing in the spring. And we also do a trial to make a strong pruning before the dry season, which is basically now. You know, like a strong pruning to see which plants are able to enter in the dry season with growth, which is also a very good information. For example, eucalypt can do that. I mean, we prune them normally in February, late February is the moment that, I mean, before they explode. But also we like to do these trials of pruning the plants before the heat, to see if they can reorganize themselves and enter in a growth. And so this, it's not, it can't, but we have another one that I will show in the other place. It's called the Myoporum insularis, that it was a tip from Giuseppe Sanicandro that you're going to see. That is amazing. I mean, it's a plant that keeps growing during the winter, and we can prune it very low and it regrows. And so it's a very generous plant for pruning. Also that one, Buddleia, that it's this one that you see here. It's also been a wonderful surprise now in the 3rd year. I mean, it has like this new shoots and it starts to become really tall. I mean, we need to prune it to be I mean, underneath this kaki, I mean, how's it called?
Persimmon.
Persimmon. And, but it is also a plant that keeps growing also during the winter which is really interesting for us to know. These are good information because we can understand which plants enter in different phases during photosynthesis. Because this is the dynamics of the Mediterranean as well. I mean, it's not only to have green plants, because even the evergreen plants, here is very cold, during the winter, they stop. They don't work too much. And that's why also it is important to have, as you see in the Oliveto, we are having those stripes that we can add as the winter cereals and the winter plants that really in that moment they thrive. And so, but also understanding the companions, the plants that they thrive and they do photosynthesis well during the peak of the summer, when also some plants just stop and some they say, no, I can do that, as we were talking before about the capers. I mean, plants that at the peak of the heat, where everybody's also stop a little bit their metabolism, and those plants are saying, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm cool, I'm fine. And this way we can have all these elements together, so we have like a good balance through all the years, not only the pulse of the photosynthesis that shifts from the winter, it tends to go near the ground, and in the spring, summer, it starts to go up to the trees, I mean bushes and trees, but also include always these plants that have this bridging properties.
So, this is fascinating. The key learnings that I'm understanding from this first area, this first trial area of the Jardin, the key takeaways that you're actively, whether it was an active pursuit of learning or you just kind of learned as a product of doing it. Number one is what species, like the sage in this case, are going to carpet the ground and increase the shade so the existing ground cover of the grass is diminished. So what's going to be the fast establishing ground cover that starts to move that shade dynamic forward? And the second interesting thing is, what are the species that can handle the pruning dynamics? The heavy prune in spring, but also the heavy prune going into the dry season. What species are going to be able to rebound really well through the dry season after a heavy prune? I see a mulberry over there. I would imagine that the mulberry is in that class of species. And so that's part of what you're looking for. The aggressive ground cover plants that are going to shade the soil, the aggressive plants that are going to rebound really well after the heavy prune. And what are those species that are thriving in the extremes? What are those species that are thriving in the really cold months and in the really hot months that are kind of, as you said, the photosynthesis is transitioning through between winter and summer from the ground cover, the understory, and then up in the growing season, up into the canopy. And it's this Mediterranean dynamic that the brunt of the photosynthesis moves throughout the season.
Yeah, precisely. And that's why, I mean, some of them, that's really what we like the Myoporu and so on. And one thing that you mentioned about the mulberry, it is also a key species here. I mean, it grows almost as fast as the eucalypt, and a lot of potential. It needs almost nothing. It's an amazing plant. I mean, adapted to these conditions. And as the pruning, who gave us a wonderful information was our friends from Golegan, where you also went. I mean, João, that they pruned in late August. And it was amazing that they did this heavy pruning late August, and when it was October, they were already with branches like this. So they in the second spring, as we used to call the fall, when temperatures start to days start to be shorter and temperatures drop a little bit, we have a little bit of more moisture, they had a strong growth again. So this is a plant that we can consider amazingly well to prune in the end of the dry season, so they can explode growth during the first weeks of the fall.
And I think the key thing here is, what are you doing with this information? You're not just noticing it and saying, cool, we'll make sure to put a couple of mulberries in the next systems. You're probably looking at this information and saying, cool, the eucalypts respond really well, the mulberries are this massive pump that lets us extend into that second spring. The action then that follows is putting an aggressive amount of mulberries. You said something about you're putting mulberries every 2 meters in one of the other systems, and you're putting these systems, you're filling them aggressively with these plants that you're noticing in this first area perform well.
Yeah, and also, I mean, when we talk about the emergent plants, because normally in most of systems, as a fast growing, we use either eucalypt or poplar, and also to have this, I mean, two different categories of plants, that one is a native deciduous tree and the other one is an exotic evergreen tree.
Is poplar native to here?
Yeah, poplar is native to the Mediterranean. But the poplar, it takes longer to remake its crown, but if you prune in May, it explodes in growth. So it produces during the dry season more than the eucalypt here. But the eucalypt has this property of we can control the shade for evergreen species, evergreen crops, for example, be it even grapes or be it a citrus, that are sensitive to frost, for example. Because now we are having, I mean, when we have, as I mentioned, we have late April, we have, in May we had some frost and still very cold weather. So having the eucalypt while the poplar still, they are not fully, recovered, especially in April, they are not still with a formed crown, and having like a plant evergreen that can do this protection and we can control. Of course, then we need to see how the amount of light that is needed for our plants underneath, but they do this work.
And this is what we were talking about before, is the decision-making process that makes syntropic agriculture. It's not about the plant assortment. It's not about what spacing do I put my poplars and eucalypts at. It's how do you notice these little micro nuances of the needs of the microclimate, right, of certain crops, and how do you make decisions in accordance with that, right? The combination of the deciduous poplar and the evergreen eucalypts to moderate the exact kind of climate that you need for whether it's citrus, whether it's grapes, whether it's pomegranates, whatever it is. That's what makes it, and that's the nuance.
Yeah, and then again, I mean, we go back to Ernest. I mean, the way he does with the cacao. I mean, the way that he really mimics the disturbance system that the cacao likes. And so it's again, as we were also talking about, it's not only the proportion of the emergent layers, but it is the dynamics of shades that you're gonna play with throughout the year. So you need to have that boost of light, and so you prune everything. So you have flower induction in those plants that are in the understory. But then those plants, as they mature their fruit, as they enter in a different phenophase, in a different physiological phase, they also like to mature some fruits under a new shade. I mean, and this is something that is, this idea, this concept is really important. It's not under a shade, but it's under a new shade, under a shade that is being remade, because there is all the information that the new growth, and so it is a rejuvenated system, and that's why, I mean, for example, Ernest cacao is so amazing, because he understood that and he mimics that in his dynamics.
And so the trials are non-stop, they're ongoing.
Ah, yes.
It's not the first year of trials and then it's like every year you're coming back, you're experimenting with new things.
Well, there is much more that we don't know than what we know. So it's I mean, we are working with, and that is the cool thing. It keeps us humble, because there is so much to know, and the more we advance, the more we understand that it is an ongoing learning process, and the more we go through that, and also the more pleasant it is, and the more we remove our ego from ourselves, because it's just joyful to do it, and it works nonetheless. That is the cool thing.
That's one thing that we were enjoying speaking about over the last couple of days, is how this isn't really, it doesn't feel like work, it feels like fun, it feels like play, and I think that's what you speak about as like fulfilling our function, like tapping into what it is we are doing here as humans as part of these ecosystems. This is the second system. We're at the Horto.
Yes.
And the focus here was vegetable production.
Yes, here was classic vegetable productions between agroforestry, so agroforest line. So we have one tree line every 5.2 meters, and we added 3 beds in the middle, and or like a classic 80 centimeter beds. In the middle, we added Carpobrotus, because we wanted to try this plant as a water reservoir. I mean, almost like a water tank. It's a plant that we can use during the summer, because it really organizes water in a wonderful way, and also because normally the succulent plants, they don't like frosts and cold winters, but here This one stands very well. For example, aloe vera, we tried, they don't make it. But this one is working fantastically well.
And
and
so
here,
5.2 meters between tree lines, 3 beds in the middle,
yes,
aromatics, and then in the middle bed was it's called ice fig.
yes, ice fig, and we had artichokes every meter. And I was said it was beautiful when we had it, but we have problems with small like mice, moles, and small rodents that they eat from the roots. And so, I mean, we don't want to make war against them, so we just accept that. Although here is a wonderful place for artichokes, they are just not letting us have it. We had 4 vegetable lines together with the aromatic lines. So we had a central line with aromatic plants, and only on these strips here, both sides, we planted our vegetables. And of course, this year we didn't do it because you see, we did a lot of, we did almost 5 kilometers of vegetables in the new system. So we left this for a moment. But here, the management was, we came pruning very heavily this aromatic in the beginning of the season, and then it opened space, and then we planted the vegetables in these 2 stripes. And so the vegetables started to grow as the aromatics growing back and remaking their leaves and their crown, so having a positive effect. And it was something really beautiful to see. For example, tomatoes are suffering a lot from the sunburn, and here they were like having their bunches protected, for example, and leaning on salvia, and so it was really, they work just fine, together, very close together. So it's almost like here is what happens in the macro happens in the micro. Imagine that this is like a stratified little forest, and we do a disturbance to add our vegetables. And this was working nice. We did this for 2 years, but like the manual work was still very, very big. So, and we tried to mechanize it somehow to make the planting and the making of this, working this little strip more mechanized, but it was hard to find because also there are a lot of rocks and stuff. This year we came up with a new idea that in order to make this more easy to handle, easy to mechanize.
Before we move to that new iteration, the newest update, if we just walk through almost line by line between the fruit tree lines of 5.2 meters, we have the fruit tree line.
Yes.
It has, the fruit trees, it has support trees, it has the diverse aromatics. And then we have this walking path.
Yes.
Which is the old wooden logs.
Yes, right? Because we had here on the farm, it was abundant, and so we decided to use it rather than burn or shred because they were already kind of old.
And then the next edge, the next line right here, was the vegetable line. Mm-hmm. Single line of vegetables, diverse aromatic line to get pruned. And then it kind of mirrors that. So then it was again on the other side of the aromatics, vegetable line, wooden walking path, and then the middle line of the ice plant and the ice fig and the artichokes and some pistachiolentiscus. And then that's basically just mirrored once again, path, vegetables, aromatics, vegetables, path, next fruit tree line. Yeah,
fruit tree. And here, since these 2 areas, the first one that we saw and this one, they are close to the house, and so they are very diverse. We have a fruit tree here every 4 meters, and in between, all the other layers, aromatics, bushes, and the emergent species as well.
And so this next iteration of how to mechanize this even more, because I think some people might see this and say, too complex, it's all by hand. How do we mechanize this to make it go easier?
Because the artichokes were not working, and so we needed to remake that central line nonetheless. So we replanted aromatic lines in the center one to become similar to the other ones. And then we decided to do, instead of doing like those 75 or 80 centimeter beds, we adopted just 40 centimeter beds. And this also, I must say, it's been also a dialogue with Ernest, and I love that during this dialogue there is a lot of inputs as well, and so ideas emerge. And he was saying, Felipe, 40 centimeter beds, let's go for 40 centimeter beds. And he's absolutely right. It makes it easier for us also to work like this. And so we decided to have just single lines like this, the aromatics in the middle. And the goal here is we can come with a motor cultivator And with the trincha, I don't know in English how is that one, with the knives.
I don't know the name of that one, but we'll show a picture.
Okay, you show a picture of those. And after, for example, after the tomato are done, I mean, after we need to remake it, we just come with that trincha with knives, with the BCS and those like narrow ones. And the aromatics here, they will be basically on the paths. So the goal is, as this tomato will outgrow this aromatics, we'll keep them a little bit lower, we'll prune them a little bit, and so it will be on top of these two aromatic lines. And then after we harvest, the aromatics take over. So there is no 1 centimeter of soil exposed after the harvest. So there's really, and then there will be disposing of aromatics, and then we prune. We come with the BCS, with the trincha, and then of course they're vegetables. The soil is not really prepared for it, so if we can add a layer of compost, another layer of a straw, whatever, and we plant them, and then we have our aromatics on the side, basically on the path. So here it is the space only for the tires of our multi-cultivator. So we walk here with the tires, and with aromatics on this side. They're not just grown yet, and the aromatics growing on this side. The tires of our multi-cultivator will just walk through a vegetation. And so soil protected all the time, and of course applying all the other principles, like to keep the pruning, not letting it age or in senescence. And so in this way we can do even like the pause between like spring, summer vegetables and winter vegetables after we harvest the tomatoes. For example, we can prune and start over with our winter crops.
And how is this helping you guys reduce water needs?
Well, I mean, the more photosynthesis we have, the more cover we have, the more things we have to prune, the more protected the soil is. And so here we can't water much because we have salinized water. And so we were, this vegetable production, we were watering once a week and sometimes even more, every 10 days. So in the first year we watered 8 times. And this is really crazy compared to what normally people practice here. So this idea that, we have more plants, there will be more competition and less water, no, because the plants, they are doing photosynthesis, so they are exudating, they are creating soil aggregates, so the soil is protected, it's always cooler. We have sensors showing that they stabilize a little bit more, they stay fresher. And of course, all the mulch, due to the pruning of the aromatics and also the residues of previous crops, they help to keep moisture in the soil. So we disturb as little as possible. And one thing that is really important I forgot to mention, and here as we remake this bed, we'll never come back with the rotative hoe, the motozapa as they call here, because that is like pulverizes the soil every year, and we don't do that. Here mostly we do that, the cutting mechanism that cut the residues and kind of shreds the residues of the previous crops. And we have a mechanized version of a broad fork that we can attach to a multi-cultivator, and that is the most what we do. We can fluffy the soil a little bit without turning, without damaging, without removing the mulch of the previous crops, and even the mulch of the aromatics that will help us to create this bed. So this is, as we say, this will be a lasagna of we'll keep adding layers of crop residue, mulch of the aromatics that are on the sides, and of course vegetables. We need to add some compost once in a while, so it will be just to be adding on top of that over time, but never again we will do this movement. And that's why it also helps to retain more moisture, because the soil is not being pulverized and destroyed every year.
I've seen a lot of different vegetable agroforestry systems, and so far this is one of the most inspiring ones, just in terms of how much diverse perennial life there is that's in the system and integrating the vegetables. It's not just naked alleys in between tree lines. it seems like it's a more complete vision of how to incorporate vegetables, these annual dynamics, into a perennial system.
And one thing I think it's important to say, because here, since in the beginning, we're also trying which aromatics would play a nice role in this kind of system. And also we wanted here to have a nice diversity, because also there is the aesthetic element. But we did already in other places reducing the diversity of aromatics and thinking about like a functional stratification, and thinking about having the diverse plant families, because most of aromatics, they belong to the same family, like all Lamiaceae, for example. I mean, all of this, for example. And then we did in other places, we were thinking about plant families and also plants that would facilitate the pruning. So the pruning we'll do with the hedge trimmer, and we come like this, for example. So it is a walking speed that we do in diagonal and putting it down. So we are like testing in different places, and in other systems we'll test different aromatics that are also more suitable for that kind of management, you know. And of course here it was not initially thought to work in this way, and I think there is still a room to, and we'll keep doing other trials until we really find the perfect combination of suitable plants that are easy to prune and regrow very quickly, and they will have the perfect balance with vegetables.
So I think one of the key takeaways here from this next area is exactly what you just said, is now starting to refine your species, refining which species work for certain kinds of mechanized management, especially if the goal is to do things at a bigger scale, which the next systems that we'll see after this certainly are a bigger scale, require mechanization. This area is testing which of these diverse species that we've incorporated can tolerate our management strategies, our management cycles. Next system, we are at the fruteto, which translates
yes, to a fruit orchard, but a little bit less diverse compared to the other ones, because here it was an existing olive, and from this part up, I mean, to my right, the olives were still standing, but from, I mean, to this left, this part here, they had been removed already because they died because of the disease, and they were doing grain cultivation here year after year. And so, I mean, it's actually very visible, the difference of growth between the two kind of treatments or history sites. I mean, they were 10 by 10, the olives, and as you see, we decided to do something quite unusual, was to connect the lines diagonally, because we wanted this line to be completely north-south, and like this we did it. And in a way we added the olives where it was missing, so to keep the original and the tradition of this kind of system that was 100 plants per hectare of olives. And so in diagonal, when we connect the lines diagonally, so they were like 12 to 14 meters apart, and in the middle we added 3 fruit trees. So 2 that were either low median or median canopy layer, and in the middle 1 emergent, be it cherry or pears. And of course a lot of aromatics in the bottom, and all the bushes and everything else. And here is a little bit more simplified, because we have to facilitate harvest, so we decided for 1 per line, 1 fruit tree as a main one. And but it's still diverse, because one thing that we were also mentioning before, here we don't have a benchmark to understand what is the vocation of the place. We just don't go to a neighbor and say, okay, this is a place that is good for this or that. I mean, here they did olives, and olives were not working anymore, and any other like a kind of crop was still like a question mark for us. What would be the vocation and the most suitable thing? So we had to start with some diversity as also a safeguard to us, rather than, okay, let's do this. That would be very risky at the beginning. And so we have our marketing and product development team that are already with what we have, thinking on possible products out of this. So that's why, I mean, it is more simplified compared to the others, but it's still diverse in the overall system. And so by doing this, also we had 1 olive plus fruit lines every 6.5, 7 meters. So it was still too far to leave like this, so we decided to include another line in the middle that we were calling the evergreen lines, because we put many trees and bushes and especially evergreen ones, because since this place has been deforested and has been increasingly deforested for the past years and decades, the olives were suffering a lot with winds. Yeah, I mean, during the winter they were just like the only ones standing and taking all the cold alone. And so we decided also to add like companions. I mean, basically every 7 meters, 6.5, to have an evergreen wall of plants, so they could just protect against the wind. And so, of course, I mean, more diversity, more biomass, and so on and so forth. I mean, it is also the area that we had more failures, because the beginning, not only the implementation was a little bit, we had some, problems with timing, with machinery, with delivery plans. So I mean, things that sometimes happen. And in addition, it is the poorest place. So although the soil was very well prepared, we used that subsoiler with the rotative hole. I mean, we had the prototype here from Renostec, and so it was very well done. But in the end, I mean, some plants got stunned because the soil, and then it was also an information for us to see that we need to give something in the beginning here. I mean, in this area that was extremely, by far the poorest one, the most compacted one, we almost didn't give anything. We put some wood chips, very little compost at the beginning, and I think the result came. I mean, they didn't grow as we expected, and now for this next fall we have predicted to kind of do a reform here. I mean, we already planted some, as we were mentioning, mulberries in these middle lines because they grow well here, and we are planning to do grapes onto these mulberries in the future, and in this in these evergreen lines, and also we are reorganizing all the mulch, and we'll put a nice layer of compost, and to see if we can speed up the growth of this place, because even eucalypts for 2 years they were kind of, I mean, I've never seen that before, really not growing well.
I mean, you can see the difference between this area back here with the
Yes.
eucalypts being, you know, maybe 4 or 5 meters, growing a lot, and then out here where, like you just said, they're, you know, stunted. One of the interesting things that we were just speaking about as we were walking over here is keeping this honest in terms of, you know, we were looking at some of the avocados and saying, oh, but they're especially going to be struggling when it gets really hot here, 40, 45 degrees, very little water. They're grafted trees, and so I thought, oh, well, why don't you just plant them? And I asked, why don't you just plant them directly from seed? And the thing that you said, which I really appreciated, was needing to keep this similar enough to the commercial practices that are happening here, because otherwise it's not a fair comparison. How are you guys applying that principle here?
Yeah, here, I mean, for example, here's a good example, because the avocado plantations are coming to Puglia. I mean, there are like companies that are investing here, and it is kind of crazy because it is a very water demanding plant, and so we wanted to try in a more dense, I mean, protected system, diverse, to see how they would behave. And yes, and of course, I mean, for us to make sense, we needed to use similar plants that those guys are using to see if how they would behave. But here also it was, I mean, we planted 40 plants very scientifically in this in a line that was more protected already, with the eucalyptus a little bit higher. So we do the protection, especially in the first years, against extreme heat, and also in another place that was a little bit more open. But then, I mean, all of them died. But we attribute that the quality of our water, because avocado is one of the most sensitive or sensible plants to salinize water. And so once we started, even the little water that we give, it's when we started to give, they really they showed all the signs of being poisoned with salinized water. So I mean, the trial that we wanted to have, we still would like to have, but I mean, this specific location is not suitable because of the quality of the water, and not that in the whole Puglia is like this. but we are in the Adriatic coast, so the kind of rock formation here, it facilitates the entrance of salinized water. So I mean, here it ended up not being the suitable place for this research. So I mean, although we still have some of them, as you saw, but in protected places, and we'll try during the summer not to give water that, I mean, we'll give water from rain, because there we are close to them. So we still do like some trials with them, with different kind of water, to see if we also see different results.
Let's dive into these rows.
Okay,
Let's see what's happening.
Let's go in there.
There's almost 30 lines in the fruteto, in the fruit orchard that's been retrofitted. We're gonna walk pretty much line by line and just kind of explore how things change and what the different dynamics are, the different experiments. This one right here is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, here is like when we started from here, is still wanting to do some trials. So I mean, here we just added a lot of Myoporum to really very systematically to do pruning trials with them, and some we prune extremely drastically and they died, and some so we kind of understood the right amount of pruning they can stand. We also added some how to say, modular senza spine, that let's see if this year, I mean, we never irrigate these areas, so we added some raspberry between here, and so I mean, but we never actually did any kind of specific pruning. And let's see, and never irrigated. Let's see how they behave. But anyway, here it was the beginning, also part of trials to see how plants behave. And here again, it's not like it's a place that we're gonna do like a reform last year. And you see that how even in the edges, the citrus is still very yellowish leaves. So showing that, I mean, the place is not yet good for them. And so this fall we'll come here very strongly to make the right adjustments, and to see if we can work it out. And so from this part onwards, we move from the olive still existing area to the previous grain areas, so we can really see how plants are smaller. I mean, the fruit trees are okay. I mean, they are, because at least in then we did a little bit of treatment around, so we don't lose those trees. But all around is a little bit, it's something that needs a reform.
And when you say treatment, you mean compost amendments?
Yeah, just compost. Compost and a little bit more of you know, some wood chips and compost around. I mean, we made a nest around it. Yeah. And
you can see there's a lower diversity of aromatics here as we progressively go.
Yeah.
Mostly it's sage here and saltbush.
Yes, and but we planted a lot, and that's the thing, and they just didn't make it. And so here was a little bit hard at the beginning, but here, for example, is a pomegranate line, and this was the evergreen where we planted by cuttings a lot of mulberry this year. And so as we go here, another pomegranate line.
And those still have the lines of the cherries in them.
Yes, they are cherries, either cherries or pears in the middle, and then we have an olive. You know, like for example, here you see we have a pomegranate, and you see eucalyptus that are stunned, that we're going to solve it. And here it was all planted. I mean, if you see, they're still here. For example, here's the myrtle with more than 2 years, and it's like this. Here is a strawberry tree. Also 2 years. You see how small they are. And so it's although I mean they were supposed to be plants that grew in any kind of situation, and even when Ernest were here, we were discussing, say, no, isn't this compaction and stuff? But then we did a compaction test. It's fine. I mean, the soil was well prepared, and it's just they just stunned. It was almost too much. And so we'll definitely come back to reorganize this. But we see, I mean, and what is helping us also to conclude that is where we gave a little bit of more love and care with the fruit trees, and they're fine, and they're more demanding, and they're fine. So maybe it is that a little else we should add that will make a difference. Here lentiscus as well, I mean 2 years old, very small. And so like a cherry, pomegranate, trees that were supposed to be here, and then an olive. and then that is the repetition for all the fruit lines. And also in the interlines here, we tried cover crops, and we were very unfortunate with the cover crops because they were, I mean, seeded very precisely before the rain, and then the rain came and they just didn't grow. So here it was like a, you know, like a collection of frustrations that, I mean, we are not sad. I mean, of course we are sad, but we're not giving up, and we are just gonna retry and reorganize. You see, there is even some fruits.
Nectarine. Yeah, some of the greatest learnings come from the things that don't work. And even if it's a mystery of like, oh, why are things getting stunted? Why are things? Well, maybe it's just needing that extra little bit of help at the start.
Yes, and again, I mean, if it was only a reforestation project, we would be a little bit more patient and, you know, like to do more, accumulate more in the line and try to add even more resistant plants. But also we are talking about agriculture. We have here like almost 300 fruit trees, and so it will make sense. I mean, and now we found like a cheaper supplier of compost, because I mean, here is almost 1 hectare, so we need a lot. And so we will do the reform of this place. That actually I started just to leave an example for the team here when I'm not here. Just started in the first lines. And also we'll discuss this as we are there. We are, I mean, Amadeco is buying like a very narrow no-till seed drill machine. So we would be able to come in the middle. We'll be able to come here with a small tractor and add seeds. And so, because the thing that hurts us in the Mediterranean, because since we can't have, like in the tropics, perennial grasses in the middle, is to have to rework the soil in a moment where the soil, not only because it's bad, I mean, you come back there to scratch and to hurt the soil, but also because since we leave and the interrows are narrow, some perennial and nice plants start to emerge, and we don't want to I mean, we don't want to destroy those plants in order to add more. Even, I mean, here, for example, is a nice one. It's Piantagine. It's a plant that happens here naturally, and also a lot of wild fennel that grows spontaneously here in borage and so on. We don't want to disturb those plants. We want just to add, and because that is the dynamic of the Mediterranean as well.
I want to recap that and tie it back into the earlier conversation. So basically, the dynamic we spoke about in the original area, the first area we started in the Jardin, the dynamic of moving the canopy photosynthesis down to the understory between summer and winter, replicating that here, but because the spacing is so wide between the tree lines, it's hard to establish this whole area in aromatics. How do you mimic that dynamic at a larger scale with mechanization? The idea being a seed drill to directly put the cover crops into the alleys, into the axis between the tree lines without disturbing the soil, so that at that crucial time of year, instead of, because you don't have the perennial grasses like in the tropics, adding the cover crops for winter to move the photosynthesis down when the canopies become deciduous.
Yeah, and also because some of the plants, even the aromatics, during the cold, they just, I mean, they're not in their best performance. It's not the moment when they really shine. The dynamic of the Mediterranean of having this winter grasses and clovers and all these plants that during the winter when the water comes, they just, okay, this is my turn. And so this is something that it's really nice to have in the Mediterranean. So having this too, because actually it was originally with the animals that existed here, not anymore, that the kind of management that they did. I mean, they brought the seeds, and those seeds, they strongly grew during the fall, and during the winter, I mean, growth during the winter, photosynthesis, as you said, the weight of the photosynthesis there, and they were like managed by these animals. We won't do animals here, but we'll do like our animals, which is our little machines, and so as many cuts as possible. And so this way, like really maximizing, optimizing this photosynthesis in the interrows with the plants that like to grow in that situation. And what will allow us to do that and mimicking this dynamics of the migrant animals that used to populate the Mediterranean basin, will do this with a seeding machine. I mean, without scratching the soil, without turning the soil, without plowing, without even like no discs, no nothing, just adding seeds. I think that will change the game. And I mean, and you see, I mean, fruit trees are fine. I mean, no complaining about this. So if it was just like a fruit orchard, I would be happy, considering the given conditions. And here, I mean, just the beginning of the second line and that one I was just doing to leave, I mean, for the team. You see that I added more eucalyptus there. It wasn't like an existing oak. And then I gave some compost, and I reorganized a little bit the soil here and reorganized the mulch to remake this shape, this more concave shape, and trying to give some more conditions to this plant. And in some situations, there are the cuttings of the mulberry, and in the fruit lines, in some situations, I even added more trees. The olives are also fine. Here we choose for a variety called Frantoio, and they're also doing amazingly well. And here, as you see, I mean, I did a lot of pruning in the salvia, and it's really, you see it, it's really amazing. It was 1 week ago. No, I don't know, 10 days ago, and you see it's all resprouting. If we had time, we would do everywhere this now, but we can't, so we wait until fall. So I did this, reorganized everything, did a nice pruning, put some layers of compost with more wood chips, and add new plants like eucalypt, like, even here, I think there is an elder tree to protect this olive. Here there's a fruit tree that needs to replace, and and strawberry tree, and salvia, lavender, buddleia. This eucalypt, that is an existing one, you see, almost 2 years, did
almost
nothing.
2 years.
And the lentiscus and a cherry, good. Not unhappy with the fruit trees. Schinus molly, the myoporum that I mentioned, that is going to be good for pruning here in the future, and also do this insulation against the sun because it has a lot of water in the biomass. And more eucalypt, and here it was and the poplars and strawberry trees that I planted recently, and again Schinus molly. So adding more diversity to make companies to make companies to the fruit trees, and hopefully we can really kickstart the dynamics here.
This is something that was spoken about over the last couple of days as well. Is it's hard to retroactively go back and fix the system, and so that's why it's great to do as best as you can in that moment, because it's always more challenging to go back after the fact. And so when you are doing that, the protocol here has been make the observations of, cool, well, where we applied the better compost and where we put more wood chips around the fruit trees, they're doing well. But because this area was grain before, because it was intensively utilized, everything else was struggling, even the support species.
Even in the beginning, when Diane and I were tagging this area, we were using iron poles with a hammer, and it was not going in. This is how hard it was. But anyway, I don't want to create excuses, because we always like to begin in the worst place, because I think the worst, it's not worst, the most challenging and difficult place for the plants that we want to grow to feed ourselves would be a better way to say that. And here it was a conscious, like a decision that we wanted to start in the most challenging thing, and of course we hope it would work well, but we had so many problems during the implementation in terms of timing, as I mentioned. But again, now we have, at least, since we don't have problem with the strong compaction in the lines, that was our concern, because then we would need to really to start almost over. And we have subsidies to begin with. The savings account, although we don't like mechanicist or economic metaphors, but the savings account here actually did something. So I'm happy with the sage. I'm happy, these were pruned. I'm happy with the triplex, the south bush, because they are now they will help us to reset the area. So they are the ones that are really, I mean, as you see here, they are the ones that are giving, that will give like a conditions to to help us in reach and to take this step further. So it is a pulsing of this whole area where before there was absolutely nothing. Even the spontaneous herbs here were really like this, and now we are more. We have more, more capital to begin with.
Yeah, it's a compounding. Every year you're compounding, you're building on the foundation that you're building. And here the strategy for continuing that is identifying the places where you can add more trees, replacing other trees that, the eucalypts, the things that maybe were stunted, and then reorganizing the organic material to just keep compounding, keep building on the, establishing accumulation of basically carbon and organic matter in soil.
Yes, and here it was really also a lesson for us. I mean, and now we are really accumulating in the line very strongly, and with the machine, with the new seeding machine that will help us. So we'll just reset, and we are happy also to have the opportunity to do that, because it's I don't know any farmer who hasn't been through that, and we learn a lot when we have to reset.
And then I think next we go to the Olivero.
Olivetos, yes.
Oliveto, okay. This is the fourth system. We're in Oliveto, the largest of all the systems here. How large is this area?
This is 3.5 hectares.
3.5 hectares of commercial crops. And if we work backwards in time, essentially ending up with commercial olive production, before that diverse fruit production, and then earlier than that is aromatics, and then at the very start, to kick things off with the placenta, is vegetables.
Yes, precisely. I mean, here is, and we're super happy with this area. I mean, we're talking about some failures there, but this one is making us absolutely happy, completely different situation. And so here we have like existing 12 by 12 olive system, like ancient, with the varieties called Cellina di Nardò. And they were also very, affected by the disease, by the desiccation, but they're still alive. They're being treated also with the help with a friend that works here, Ivano Giofredda. And so our idea here was to connect these lines of olives with more olives. And then I need to say it was an input of Ernest that he really suggested and pushed, okay, do it very close together and build a wall, not to be a low layer like olive and monoculture, as if in intensive, super intensive schemes, but to let the olives grow, to their canopy layer, and but still having like in a hedgerow style, because according to his perception, it is the olives, they belong to the fringe of a forest, so they like and they know how to grow very close together. And so here we are trying to do this. So we have between these olives, in the line of the olives, we have another olive every 75 centimeters. And in this case, half of the area we planted wild olives, and now we are grafting in field. So we started grafting this year with varieties that are they are more resistant. And so, we in half of this area trying to build very resilient system and see how it will behave. And at the bottom of those olives, we have a kind of different variety of rosemary, which is called rosemary prostratus. It is one that instead of growing like this, it grows like this. It's, as Ernest says, is a horizontal tree. And they will be, so together with the olive, like the canopy and the ground cover and more low layer, and it can live for very long. And we planted a lot of onions as well, last year, so we're going to harvest onions and garlics in between. And in the middle of this 12-meter, we added a fruit line. And these fruit lines also, although very diverse in aromatics and bushes and so on, but they are favoring some kinds of species. In this one, for example, this is an orange line, and we have every 4 meters an orange. And in the middle, we have a fig. So like the oranges will be kind of a medium layer, and the figs will be a little bit higher. And of course, and then we have our friends eucalypt and poplar to help us in the beginning.
And there's also the pecans in this line as well.
Yes,
So
and
we've got the citrus, figs, and pecans.
Yeah, here we did also as sessions, I think, because we have 12 by 12. So there is the projection of the interspace between the olives. This projection here, we have 4 citrus, 2 figs, and 1 pecan nut at the center. So in the end, in the line, we have 1 pecan nut every 12 meters.
So you almost could design this area more or less as a grid pattern.
Yes.
And the grid is more or less repeating with, across the field is different varieties of certain things, but the pattern remains of between the existing olives at 12 meters, 4 fruit trees and 1 emergent nut or pear or cherry.
Precisely, yes. And all the other, that will help. I mean, part of it, like the poplars.
He has got this aversion to using the terminology support species. It's what I use. What do you prefer to? Because
No, it is something that is not even mine. It's really, again, I mean, over quoting Ernest, because it is his thing that he says. I mean, it's not that like a support species. They are part of the system. They're part of the organism. And in the same way, we can't say that one part of an organism is more important than other. And so with it all belongs to this macroorganism. And so just out of semantics, we try to not use it. They're just part. They're here as any other. And of course, we have the productive ones that are the commercial ones, but and they're also part of the system. But then we have the other elements of this organism. And then, I mean, and here in this case, because we have citrus, we planted another eucalypt very close to the citrus. So they will do a protection in the first years. And here it's quite nice. I mean, you see this, there is a lavender underneath. And there is this Artemisia, and the citrus is very, very protected. I think during the summer it will like. And also a protection that comes from the top, from the eucalypt. And then we have lentiscos, and here we have tarragon that we're going to use in the kitchen as well. And we always try to use some new species to see how they behave. In this case, we put some elagnus, but they are the ones that failed most. But anyway, some are quite beautiful and nice. But the overall ideal is canopy layer that will push up to 50% of the overall area coverage, and low layer ground cover. And here we have all the layers, all the other layers, be it emergent, median, and also some canopy and low. And we add, and so we are talking about fruit, olives, 6 meters, and in the middle we added another aromatic line. Because the aromatics are, that it started to be almost like, as we mentioned, the weed, or our, the equivalent of the grasses in the tropics, but can also become like a good commercial harvesting crop as well, because we've been speaking to experts and also reading like a scientific literature, and when there is the aromatics are grown in diverse systems like here, or when they are grown in the wild and not in monocultures as they are commercially, they produce more secondary metabolites. So the kind of, also the disturbance that we promote here that mimics a natural environment, they stimulate this plant to produce different molecules and more complex molecules. So we are also not only for those aromatics, but we are pointing at quality of fruits, quality of oil, quality, oils for the olives, and quality of oil from the aromatics, because of the dynamics of this system, the way we are intending to manage these systems. And I mean, here, for example, in this line, we have sage. We have lavender. I mean, still very small, but they are growing. We planted recently, and of course, we have the vegetables that we add in between. So this year, since we did basically the whole line, so we have almost 5 kilometers of new lines with aromatics and vegetables, and that's why we didn't plant over there, because we'll have just a massive production this year, and they're all super nice, super happy. But what I like a lot about this design is because we still have these 2 interlines that is pretty much 2 meters wide, and it will allow us to come with our seeding machine to again mimic the dynamics of the Mediterranean, including the winter cereals. And so we have space to do that, and now we'll have the machines to do that. And we are already envisioning to also do some trials with wheat. I mean, we are in Italy, so it is a pasta. I mean, we can't tell people not to eat pasta. It's part of the culture. It's part of the tradition. And we already planted wheat in some areas. And what we also hope to do here is to do no-till grain cultivation with plants underneath. I mean, for example, we see that the Medicago sativa, like herba medica, is still maintaining here even during the summer, although it almost disappears during the summer. But as we also narrow this interlines and there is more influence of those plants, we already know, based on the other experience, that this interline initiates to retain more moisture and to host life for longer, I mean plants for longer during the dry season. And what we expect here is to be able to come, be it a grain cultivation or just cover crops in general, and to keep adding and do a dynamics that will also allow us to harvest here in the middle. Of course, the plant will be easier, the harvest is still a challenge. There are some narrow machines, some combines that we can use for wheat, but I mean they are super expensive. But anyway, at the beginning we'll do some trials, even if we have to do it manually, because I mean, imagine the dream of adding winter cereals or wheat, and so we do like people here did back in the days. That I mean, they use sheep or goats to cut the wheat around Christmas, and so it would double the growth, it would regrow, and then after we do the harvest, and there is something in between. And so we want to mimic a little bit of that dynamics without the animals, but our machines. And so after we harvest the wheat, also to allow some other elements that are able to stay to keep the photosynthesis going, and dreaming to connect the spring with the fall by having photosynthesis in the whole area. That's the dream.
I've got a question, because this is a really elegant solution from, especially not being from this climate, not being from this area. You've done a really, from what I can see, a fascinating job of organizing a lot of the agricultural traditions that come from here, but you've organized them in such a way that we don't see today, we don't see in the landscape, and maybe there's vestigial remnants and patches of that, but you've organized the traditional grain cultivation with the aromatics that, the vegetables kick off, and then the traditional fruit trees from this area or areas around the world that now match these conditions, as well as with the olives and the really deep tradition culturally of that production. But you've combined all this in a really elegant way that A, it scales, B, it's got a lot of commercial viability, and C, the management of it isn't this like terribly intimidating complex thing where you've got everything all stacked together, you've organized everything and arranged this orchestra in such a way that is just, from the sky, from the footage, but also from the practicalities of it, is really beautiful.
No, thanks. I mean, and yeah, it was I guess the purpose was also a little bit like this. I mean, as we said, we are not in an agribusiness area that people are just here to make money with land. So I mean, there are strong communities here that are very much attached to culture, and at this point they are, I mean, they lost the traditional landscape. It is a chance for us as well to propose a new way of organizing, the dynamics. I mean, organizing the elements that are part of the dynamics of the Mediterranean, and I really like, I mean, the way, I mean, it is distributed in terms of spacing. I mean, because it will be possible here, for example, in the future, we plan to have a platform that goes on top of this aromatic line, so we can reach and prune the trees. I mean, that slowly will make their crown here, and it still allow us to come with a small tractor in the middle. And so we really here we are aiming at efficiency, mechanization and in a way that people can see and also can inspire. And again, there's a lot of abandoned lands or situations like this with olive that people are attached to. I mean, here it would have been much easier, and also with help of government subsidies to just remove the trees that are sick, that are bad. And we just choose the hardest way, because working between the existing olives it is kind of more challenging for mechanization. But because we want to respect this tradition, and also, I mean, we love these trees, as people here love the trees, these existing trees that they grew up with these old varieties like this, the Chelina di Nardò. They produce a rich, fantastic oil, and and so why not? I mean, it's part of the job. And agriculture is also based on traditions, and we respect that a lot, because it's part of the culture.
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job of building on this the shoulders of giants, right? And that's what the work that we're all doing is. You're building that new iteration, because it's always it's endless iterations of culture, and I think you guys are doing a really strong work in building the next iteration of that here.
Oh, thanks. And we actually I mean, we have a deep respect for that, because we learn a lot from them. I mean, especially here in Italy, it is the biggest diversity of domesticated plants in the world, and it is amazing how they do that, and their knowledge of plants and wild plants, and each region has own varieties, and it's such a rich culture based on the land use. And if you go back and think about, I mean, what happened here before with the Etruscans, with the I mean, when you see like the quotes of Pliny the Elder, how in the Mediterranean basin things were organized. So it is, I mean, it is here. I mean, it is a lot of knowledge that it's here as well. And I mean, we don't have an intention or the arrogance just to come and say how to do things. But we are, of course, learning a lot from what exists and their knowledge. I learn a lot with the workers here that have their background with farming, with Andrea, with Ivano. So it is a constant dialogue with them as well. And we just try to organize all this knowledge and the elements that are part of this system in this framework. So it is really a collective way of putting things together, and the same way that plants collaborate, we just are collaborating to co-create this.
So this is a detail that's at the end of the Olivero system, and this is a new strategy, a new technical detail of how you guys are organizing the layout of the lines, planting patterns, that's going to influence management, but it's also going to be spread throughout the whole system. And it's building on the back of what you guys have already done with the single line, the tree lines with the aromatics in the inside of the line. Now you're expanding to the edges. You're having these living edges on either side of the tree line with not a crazy diversity of the aromatics, but a consistent variety or species to facilitate basically like efficient management and a lot of function.
Yes. I mean, the first half that we did last year, as you saw, we did like with the wild olives, and we grafted in the field. And this other half that we did, we started last fall, and now we are just concluding it. We did with already grafted olives. I mean, like also a local variety to see. I mean, the actual reality of people that we were mentioning. This is how people get the plants, and so we'll see how they behave in this system as well. And this will be the final design of everything. I mean, we started here, but we'll expand to the other area as well, and by the end of the year everything will look like this. I mean, here is the fruit line, I mean, in the same fashion that you saw over there, but in this case we are already adding the aromatics on the side. So there are two, instead of being just like a pile of the, you know, this double shape mounds of straw and wood chips, we are adding plants in the middle of it. And in this case, because of the aromatics that we are going to do for oils, I mean for product, and we are, in this case here, there are lines of Helichrysum, and also it is helichrysum to facilitate harvest. And we also planted in the other line something in between in the beginning, because these were a little bit bigger, but we planted something in between. And again, I mean, in the middle of this half, we have rosemary, and of course the lines for the, I mean, it's very visible here where the machine, our seeding machine, will work. And here again, helichrysum, but with the olives. And so in the end, I mean, the idea is, if you take, I mean, from a fruit tree to a fruit tree, or from the olive to olive, doesn't matter, it's like we have like one tree of lines, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of aromatics. So when we think about like the pattern of the stratification that we want to reach, like to have a very strong weight of photosynthesis happening in the low layer, and that is something that in many Mediterranean systems we feel that it's lacking. And then we are really having this strong photosynthesis happening near the ground with the help of these aromatics. And then, I mean, 6 lines of aromatics, and like the 3 lines of trees, and of course all the interlines with cover crops, and that will keep adding. So that's how it's going to look in the future.
Beautiful example. Yeah, it's and the continual refining of things. I can
Yes.
see you're excited about it, and no doubt there'll be something in another 2 years, 3 years that you're like just as excited about.
No, and it's amazing because here, I mean, since there is this it is either too hot or too cold. There is a very like short window for digestion of organic matter. I mean, the period of mineralization is very short here, and so although it's very useful to put straw and to have to protect the soil, it keeps cooler. We are measuring that, and it's amazing. It works, but also it almost was asking for more plants, you know, to help decompose and digest quicker that's biomass, because here is very slow, the decomposition.
Well, then it's not oxidizing.
Yeah, exactly. And so we have, rather than having that organic matter that is sitting there and waiting because it's still too long to decompose, more plants. And since the aromatics became also like a commercial possibility, because it's at some point, I mean, we thought since the beginning about doing this, about adding like sidelines with salvia, for example, or sage, with plants that would help us to have a living edges of the system. But it was like a cost decision, a cost-based decision that, okay, let's not do it now, because it would be too expensive to implement. But since it also became something that has a commercial like possibility, and then they say, okay, fantastic, when ecology can meet the economy, and then we just laugh and we are happy.
To recap some of the key components of these 4 different systems that we've just walked through and seen, is that graduation from small scale, super high diversity when you're first arriving to a site, new climate, learning the species, learning how they interact, learning the different dynamics. And then as you expand, you're scaling up, you're adding more mechanization, you're adding more things for efficiency, for focus, target crops, management strategy. Seeing that transition over the last 4 systems, certainly inspirational in terms of somebody who's on that journey myself. Anybody who's at any scale, backyard to large production, I think can pull something out of this. So thank you for sharing, Felipe.
Oh, thank you.
And
very nice.
We're gonna go have some discussions now about some more of those invisible structures, how things are organized here, team building, the dynamic of consultancy, ownership of farms, lots of exciting stuff. We're here to look at some of the invisible structures that make this project so much more than just an agroforestry system. It's the people systems that are organized around it. And I think that's a big part of a big unspoken part about all these agroforestry projects is what are the people systems that support it. And so I think that's really interesting here. And there's a lot happening that I was unaware of before arriving here. There's this really beautiful team system that's been put into place, that it's not just you guys as the owners of this farm just operating everything yourselves, coming in as consultants. So can you speak first on like the dynamics of ownership versus consultant and what that
Yeah.
means here.
Yeah, sure. And I think one of the cool thing about these projects, because we always believe that we need to find good allies. And I think the owners of this place, and because they are like 3 different families, and they are families that they are friends, and they belong to the, you know, to the financial world, and they work with economy. And one of them, that is this one that is a very close friend for a while, Jan Gisbert Schulze, the one that invited me and Diana to come, and he thinks a lot about and he dedicates a lot of time and his effort about regenerative economies and doing different experimentation. So is a great ally from this universe. And so when this invitation especially came from him, we said, okay, this is worth doing, because there is also a chance for us to build something together with different expertises as well, from different fields of knowledge. And he gave absolutely total freedom to us. We came as independent consultants, as we still are independent consultants, and we stayed here for now this 3.5 years. We based ourselves here. We moved to here during this period to help establish this place and build the team and build the foundations of this project. And
had you done that before? Had you done that elsewhere that equipped you with the skills to pull that off here, or is this kind of the first of that?
I mean, it's in different situations, yes. I mean, for example, when we were invited to go to Mertola, Portugal, it was like a different constellation, but as interesting as here, but different, because there it is an interinstitutional constellation. I mean, there is the municipality, and there are like a civil organizations of associations and so on. And that was like a very nice, because this group of people that decided to do something different in a territory. And our thinking is, whatever we are to decide, we need to, the challenges is not just to put plants together, but it's also how to organize the different parts of our societies together. And that includes, the different stakeholders as well. Not only the farmers with their land, but also, there could be investors, could be people from the financial world, could be municipalities and and dogs. Sorry, Fortunato.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, and so we'll be. So this is again, we are talking about like samples of what builds a society and ultimately builds a civilization. And so this kind of alliances, such as happen here, such as in Mertola, for us it is really interesting. And so we are really happy to have the chance to engage with this different universe. And of course we learn a lot. Being together and the discussions together with the owner of this place that come with this very economical view, and they push us to learn things that in languages that we don't know, and that we need to to bridge those spaces that normally they don't talk well to each other. And so this has been very interesting. So here everything has has a business orientation as well, and of course we have a buffer, and we have a lot of a cushion to experiment, and a lot of freedom to experiment. But we also have a very business-oriented mindset, and we want this to work, and to work under also a new way of seeing an economy, and seeing also a farm business, because here in this kind of place, in this like a mini apocalypse situation, we can think about conventional business, because no one would bring like a conventional farm to operate here. So it is also a place for creativity. It's a place to think on different streams to run the place, to run the business itself. And I guess with this constellation of people that we have here as well in this group, that's a part of the team, is it's really promising.
The pros and cons of choosing to be consultant rather than, I don't know, is consultancy always in your view best position, or is ownership, what's the dynamic there that makes this perfect for you?
We work here as consultants, but we actually we see us as independent and autonomous professionals. And we do different works because we have different interests as well. I mean, we work here with the land because we love to do that, but also we work with the, for example, in Brazil with the telenovela consultancy, with the TV, and sometimes we do works with other partners and people that we have, and we love to have this, like this life with multiple fronts of jobs, because our interests are beyond just like one place or one or one business.
Well, and your capacity, we've been having these conversations over the last few days, is like you have capacity that's greater than just the work that you're able to do here. And I don't know if I'm allowed to mention it. If not, I'll cut the name out. But doing the work, and involved in policy making decisions and education for children. And this is just one component of the work you're doing, as well as in research and science. And so you have this very diverse life because you're not solely attached to the project here.
Yes. I think we are really grateful with the career that we kind of found ourselves in, because it involves studying and researching and writing and doing field work, and we try to balance these elements, and sometimes we move accordingly. And so, we like to be like this, and I think it gives us the freedom to pursue dreams and different paths as they appear to us, as they cross our lives, and the ownership. For a project, it's. We want to have our land. In maybe in Brazil in the future to have a place to go back, but to be a home, and to be a place where we go to be home, and but the rest we like this to be everywhere and to learn, and we like it.
Yeah, I can see that. So speaking of this in terms of like business, right? You said there's all these different systems are still business oriented. What are the main revenue streams now, and as projections, or as far as the next 5, 10, 30 years are concerned, what does that look like here for Amadeco?
Yeah, I think that could be like the boys could speak better about this, because they're going to be the ones involved in that part. But
communications team.
Yes, the communication teams. Okay. I think they are more. Because we are. The way we are structured now, we take care of the field. Of course, the information is, we share all the information, but we are, Diane and I, we are more structured to do the fields, and of course, in accordance to what they feed us with. For example, if the goal is, let's do aromatic with this objective of doing oil, for example. Okay, let's add the aromatic like this, and favor it. And again, when the economy meets ecology, we are happy. And so, so far, this is very much aligned. There is no kind of request from the commercial side that is in conflict, has a conflict of interest with the Syntropic system, the agroforestry, and so on. And that's why we are so happy, and we get along well in this field. And also, for example, here, because although we are doing all this, but it's still a very young farm. The oldest system we have there 3.5 years, so the fruits are not in production just yet, and we started to have a little production last year, so some trials start to be done, and so far, since we are implementing lots of lines, we have already kilometers of lines, as you saw. And when we do the lines, when we plant aromatics, we plant the placenta, which are the vegetables, and the vegetables, they are, especially the summer vegetables, they are being sold to local restaurants, and that is being some kind of the business stream at the moment, and so this is also a nice work from our communication team, because they are building very good relationships with local restaurants, which also help multiply the proposal, because we are not certified organic, but they know us personally and they love to come here and they love to talk about the ingredients in the restaurant. So it becomes like a community, almost supported initiative, because they love like the work that we've been doing, and they become really like partners in the mission. And so yeah, for the vegetable, and also I mean in the future for the oils and for the like the fruits, I think we'll go more. I mean, the Amadeco will go more into the transformation like a scene, because I mean here we don't have really a strong market for in natura for raw products. And
when you say transformation scene,
yeah, to transform into some products. I mean, how say?
Gotcha.
Like,
Value-added products.
Yeah, value-added products.
Yeah.
Because here we don't have even the structure to sell. I mean, to do like I mean all fruits the way they are, and so and they are doing research on that. Maybe that's why it's better
and
this part than talk.
But that's great, because it sets up this question that I have of how did this organization between, you know, yourself and Diana and the field team, how did that birth the communications team, which is, you know, it sounds from what I've spoken to Alessandro about, is that it wasn't part of this big master plan, but they came as volunteers, and they found or created a role for themselves within this space that now seems like it's this beautiful marriage, but maybe wasn't part of any original plan, but now it seems this beautiful complementary dance that's, you know, of communications, not just on social media, but like you're saying, it's connecting with the restaurant owners and getting more of this message out there, creating and inventing ideas for new products that also informs what's happening in the field. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, when it began, the idea was to really just to plant, and then as fruits and things start to, I mean, of course, doing some marketing research, but stars start to align, and then even before the actual need of a new team marketing stuff, people were just coming. And so the team was building, I mean, started to build very naturally, and because people got excited and they got attached to the narrative, to the project, to the idea, and so it is very strong in the purpose. I mean, everybody is very committed to the purpose of supporting this level of complexity in the field and trying to build a business that's that respects and communicates and embraces the diversity there is in the field. And this way, it was planned that it would happen eventually, but it kind of just was falling into places without effortlessly.
Yeah.
Which was good, which we felt very fortunate.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the beauties and benefits of having a project that is so compelling.
Oh, I guess. I think.
Like it'll attract people who see the vision and feel moved by that enough to want to move their whole life here, essentially.
Yeah, no, it's nice, and you know, and this region is it's so nice this way, because here, I mean, south of Italy, it is a place that people have a lot of attachment here, but not many opportunities, and that's why there is people just leave. I mean, young people, they just go to the north, go abroad, and this is almost the fate of this place, of the south of Italy. And now we are seeing, at least in this this small scale, that we can see the opposite. I mean, people, they're just coming back because they want to be here, because it's where they were born, and so there is a new sense of pride that they want to build, and this connection that they want to build. And I mean, not only us, but some other initiatives that are here in the region. You're going to visit some of them, and it is beautiful to see this movement that really grows very organically, and and I think it will be very relevant to the region.
And how before I go off to try and find the communications team and sit down with them, how can people who are in this position apply what you guys have started here? How can they learn from what you're doing here to do this on their own land? Yeah. Very nice.
Super excited.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I think it's hard to say because every place is so context dependent, and each experiment or each business, each farm is so context dependent. It's very hard to say how things would work, because even what had been done here, there were some guidelines and some goals that we wanted since the beginning. I mean, since it was Diane and I and the owners of this place, and then things were, of course, we had these goals, and but then things were aligning more as other people were coming and joining, and so the project started to gain its a face, and it's still doing, because it's still so recent. So I think one thing I like about the Syntropic approach, and there is room for creativity. We are not limited by the food system and the way agriculture is done and marketed. So there are many other possibilities and opportunities, not only as a business, but also to engage with communities and to also feel other needs and voids, that existential voids that we have. And if if people are creative, they find it. They find a way, as we've seen in so many examples around the world. I mean, so many in Brazil, so many inspiring examples that people, they find like just a niche that is really good, and we are really happy to always to know that it's always related to high quality products. And so this is, I think, one constant is that, I mean, this high quality products. So products that come out from a forest dynamics, they are high quality products, because this is one of the biggest or one of the most impactful information that we can give. And we hope that people understand that food that is grown in a healthy organism, it's going to be good for us. It's going to be good for not only for the soil, good for the place. We're talking about ecosystems restoration in functions and dynamics, but also the outcome is just more nutritious food. And we hope, although it's still like small initiatives, although they're growing, and we hope also that this is a main message, that eventually it will inspire also public policies and education institutions, because those are and the technology scene as well. I mean, we have already all that happening. I mean, we have allies in the public making and the policy making scene. We have allies in the technology universe. We have allies in the educational world, but this need to increase, because agriculture is not only about farmers. Agriculture, it is a collective decision of a society, of a civilization, on how we engage with ecosystems in order to produce food and goods for us, and while also allowing other life forms to live. So the decision is not on farmers. The decision is a collective decision. And we hope that this kind of work, this initiative that we're doing here, and many others that you are doing, and many other practitioners are doing around the world, they will just become a very louder and louder message, to so loud that they have to hear to us. And they have to taste the food as well.
And so if you had 60 seconds to answer this question, because over the last few days we've had lots of beautiful nuggets of wisdom and ideas I've certainly been exposed to. One of my favorite ones was that this idea of reconnecting with nature, which is something that a lot of people want to do. A lot of people want to feel reconnected with nature, because we've become very separate in the way we've organized our society and culture. And you said this hilarious thing that reconnecting with nature isn't doing yoga in the forest. But it's this desire that a lot of us have, is to do that work and reconnect with nature, reconnect with these ecosystems that we're enmeshed in. So to leave things off, if you had 60 seconds to explain and share your thoughts on how people can go about doing that.
Yeah, I think, I mean, first of all, we're not against just the yoga in the forest. People can do that. But we just, we believe that once we establish an empathy with all the living forms, that plants and animals, and when we engage and not only go to a forest or natural environment to contemplate, and which also is a kind of a, it's a kind of a extraction that we do as well. The reflection that Ernest does and we do as well is we need to engage with that. We need to build a dialogue, and a dialogue is something that we act in that ecosystem and we wait for the response, and once we do that, and then we establish a real connection. It's not about just hugging trees, or it's not about only planting trees. It's about taking care of them, while they grow, and observe, and that as we do that, as any other life forms, and as we have with other life forms as well, that we have empathy when we see a child that is hungry, or when we see an animal that is feeling, like is mistreated or so on. We need to build this kind of empathy with natural ecosystems as well. When we see bare soil, it hurts. When we see a tree that is alone, we say it's missing something, and as we start to engage and we start to interact, it is an act of love, and we feel a lot of love, and not the romantic love, is not this love that we are used to see, but is a love as a force of a fusion, is a love that it is a cooperative force that we are built of in the end. I mean, it is the only thing that, in across civilizations, across religions, anything else, it is pleasant to feel. When we feel, feeding a hungry child, or feeding a hungry animal, or giving care to someone that is in need, it is pleasant. It gives us a lot of joy. And so working like this, it's not that we have been just the caretaker, we have been taken care as well by the system. So this interaction, it really feels, and for us it answers a lot of existential questions that we always have. And so it builds also a new ethics in how we engage and how we interact with natural ecosystems. And so that's why we don't believe that there should be always a separation between, nature is over there, and we just go to take a walk, and then we breathe nice air, we extract something for ourselves, and then we go to our homes. But no, let's engage and let's participate in that as well. Let's be part of it, actually. And I think this approach allows us to do that.
Well, like you say, nature is not a museum.
Nature is not, as Ernest says, nature is not a museum. Yes, it's a good thing. So let's get involved.
Felipe, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, big pleasure.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming, and it's very nice to meet you. And again, publicly, I want to really to congratulate you for the fantastic work you've been doing. You're really filling a gap, especially in the English-speaking world. To send information and across the world, and showing very nice, wonderful initiatives over there. And I think that the amount of information that you're putting on is just amazing. Thanks for the fantastic job you're doing.
Yeah, my pleasure, really. Yeah, because then it gets to connect me with all these incredible people. So
yes,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Hope you got something good. I know you did. We're gonna go see if we can find the communications guys. Alessandro and Gavin. It's a big pleasure to meet you guys, really, because I think a lot of the people who I've connected with who know about this project here in Italy, they know about it because of the communications. And that's a big part of why not only I'm here, but also why it is becoming a global reference. And so I think you guys do, you're the magic behind the camera, the magic behind a lot of the marketing, the branding, and the content, as well as the things that people don't see, kind of like the sales and the organization of the way that Felipe described it is you guys are creating in part way paving the future for some of these agroforestry systems based on what products you see as being options here. And so I think just having that kind of conversation around, how you guys initially kind of came into this project, how that role has you maybe created that for yourselves here, and where you see that going. Yeah, I think you guys are doing amazing work. So yeah, it's a pleasure to sit down with you guys.
Oh, that's nice, and thanks for coming. Actually, we're really pleased to have you here. Yeah, I mean, I think everything happened very organically. We came here almost 3 years ago, and we did 2 weeks volunteering because we were obsessed with Felipe and Dana's work. Of course, we had seen there. I think for them, I mean, as journalists, I think most people would agree they really sort of brought this topic into the English-speaking world in particular and brought it out, and we were extremely inspired by the doco they made for the COP21, was it? And 15, and so we came here to volunteer for 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks became 3 weeks, became 4 weeks, and I have a background in film, and so I said one day to Felipe, well, we should be documenting this. So he gave me his camera. I then just started, relearning my filmmaking skills, and yeah, it sort of progressed from then.
Yeah, yes, and then what happened is that so Gavin started filming, and we decided to almost pitch the idea of being here like long term or even full time, and we kind of like pitched this idea of like curating the communication of the project. We had some fun preparing a presentation for the partners here, the owners here at Amadeco, to kind of showcase what our ideas were for this place, like in a very honest and spontaneous way.
And because at that point you had already been collecting some footage, you had been volunteering for a number of weeks, and collecting this footage had given you that opportunity to put some kind of presentation together to present, hey, here's how we think we could contribute to this project.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd been here 3 months maybe before they came for a meeting, and I mean, we had the chance to put together a nice video of what was happening here in the field so they could connect with the project, because they don't live here full time. So that was important, and I guess it was also important for us that we were learning in the field, and that's what actually inspired us then to make the decisions of the sort of films we wanted to make on topics to explore. And as you know, it's sort of that one little bit of information can explode to, there's so many tangents you can go on, and so that was really inspiring for us. And we thought, how can we bring those topics into a branding context without oversimplifying it, the complexity? And that's, I guess, our biggest challenge. Is the complexity of the systems. We never want to dilute that, or it's very important that we try
and we're really lucky because it really sparked this collaboration between us and Felipe and Diana, because of course Felipe and Diana bring all the Syntropic arguments to it, and it was nice to start collaborating with them, kind of like trying a way that then I guess like it created a little bit the Amadeco branding voice. So as you can see, like they're really present in the videos that we do. They really love to be in the field with them, and this sometimes sparks this like really honest conversation on what we're doing, how we're doing it, and that's when sometimes we run to get a mic and we say like, okay, let's do it again, so we can have this bit voiceover to then work on. And we try to create like some models for our Instagram, even though we're trying to be also like very free. We don't want to get into this algorithm craziness, because we share what we feel like is important in the moment, and we always try to bring the Syntropic theory in it. But also on the other side, I guess like what's happening is that it's becoming also like what we want to show is also like this can be a lifestyle that someone can come and join, and we think it's important to share this kind of lifestyle again, because in the end, what we want to do is to want to convince people that this is like a good way to do agriculture for many reasons, for the soil, for the people that are here, for your soul also somehow. And yeah, we wanna. So from there we started like basically building up this whole branding, and then going back to what you were saying before, the same conversation that sparks the idea behind the videos are the same one that brought us to suggest to integrate some product, integrate some plans, integrate something that then in the future we see can become like a valuable product. Because what we want to do, and here I'm talking about us, Felipe and Diana, and also the owners, if we want to prove that this kind of agriculture is viable and can be actually really interesting for a farmer, so that they can adopt also. Because one of the questions that comes up pretty quite often is like, okay, but how do you make money out of this? No, so we want to also show that it's possible, it's fun, it's nice, and we can do it. So that's how then we started working on the branding, the product. We have some idea of what the product will be. We started taking care of like all the sales of what we produce here, together with the restaurants that we now have as a clients. And the idea is also start collaborating with them, so to bring their voices too into this, because I think this, like, I mean, it's a community of plants, it's a community of people, it's a community here, and that's what we want to try to build up to.
And I guess, I mean, this not so related, but actually one of the things that I love of what Felipe and Diana brought is to how can we change the lens of how we view agriculture, you know, away from these sweeping cornfields, these like, you know, monoculture systems that have become a symbol of beauty. And that's what we try and express with our work, is how can we show the beauty of these systems through, you know, social media channels, but obviously being here is completely different. So it's about trying to educate people about what beauty is, and always trying to have this in mind when what we produce, because actually the systems here are really beautiful, and there's a lot of care that goes into, you know, that from Felipe and Diana and the whole team. So I think that's important, because this is really, I think if we can touch people emotionally and with beauty, we can then change the mindset of people, you know. So
yeah, and another thing is that also we want to try to reach as many people as possible. So somehow we also brought our expertise, being in film, being communication, to really try to get out there and to really connect with people in a way that even if they don't come and start their own project on the agricultural side, they can keep talking about it and maybe convince someone else. And maybe
and I think that reflects a bit in the people that come to our workshops. Like we end up having an amazing mix of photographers, designers, architects, other people in different spheres that can then take this knowledge and infuse it into their own occupation. And I think that's just how we can make change happen.
Well, I think that's as a result of the change in branding that you guys have compared to a lot of other agroforestry projects. And I think that's one thing that sets the work that you guys are doing and the project here apart from many other projects. But also I think it is reflected in the work that Felipe and Diana and others originally did with Life in Syntropy video in 2015.
Absolutely.
That was a video that was very different. It reached a wider audience than all of the videos previously about Syntropy, because it was maybe a little bit more, like, say, hippie kind of vibe. And that his words, not mine. But then that video kind of allowed the work to reach a broader audience, and it changed the tone in which it was spoken about and perceived. And I think that the work that you guys are doing reflects that a lot. In that it's a change in voice, it's a change in how it might be able to be perceived publicly.
Yeah.
So I think that's a beautiful thing that you guys are doing that mirrors what was happening with, you know, their work in 2015.
It's a nice sort of almost passing of the baton sort of, you know, exchange that's happened here, because actually I mean, we know a lot of this information was blocked for Portuguese or other languages, and they made it more accessible. And you can see that the graph of how it's spread across the world has gone up exponentially since probably 2015, I would say. Yeah. But you know, it's important that there's also people like you that are bringing this also to a larger audience as well, because we need people to, we need as much communication around this topic as possible.
And in as diverse of ways.
Yeah.
There's people that I can speak to that other people can't speak to, and there's people that you know I can't speak to that other people can. And I think that's the beauty of having a diversity of kinds of people, kinds of communication. Talking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important that there's as many voices as possible. But in the end, like, it reflects a little bit also what we do in the field, like the crazy amount of plants. We need to have a crazy amount of people talking about this too. So.
I've got one final question. What would your guys' views be that, you know, somebody's setting up a project similar to this, but they don't have your background, they don't have your expertise and skills, but they want to develop that voice for themselves or for their project to make it, you know, where would somebody start?
I think like the only thing that you have to do is being honest and not trying to be like emulate someone else, because in that, like, I think honesty always works, like in general, in many in all the situations. I think since I don't know, and then here I'll talk a little bit about my background, because like I've been selling and doing ads for product, overselling them. And I think like we don't need that anymore. We need honesty, we need authenticity. And so I think the only thing that you can do is find your own voice and make it, and then again, as you said, there will be people that will connect with their voice and they will start following them. You don't have to create like crazy structure, I think. Absolutely. It's a matter of also like starting with your own strengths, and then like branding will come in the future most probably, or like you can connect with someone that can help you with, or things like this. So I think being honest is the best way.
It reflects my favorite like idea of branding is just tell the truth and don't lie.
Yeah.
So,
Same.
but you know, I think this is you know, it's a really nice the constellation that's came here, and I think that the owners of this project, they really believe in really pushing the boundaries of bringing connections that will shake things up, and I think that's what I mean. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's lucky that we have this constellation of people, you know, to realize this. But I think it's also it's you don't need a $50,000 camera and crazy lenses and all this stuff to make beautiful content now. So there is tools accessible and available for people to do it. Quite. I mean, I think it's hard, isn't it? Because it's lucky because we work in the field and we get to document it. But I understand that also if you would just have your own project and you're working crazy hours, then that extra step to try and fit in these moments, it's quite a lot to think about. And but maybe in the beginning you should try and find the time and make the effort, because I mean, I guess what we notice is often you have people that they develop their project and then in retrospect they try and then show some bad iPhone photo or something that they've done to represent it, but it changes so quickly with systems. It's good to try and, I don't know, document them as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you guys are definitely paving the way, paving a beautiful frontier, not just for inspiring other people with the Agroforestry, but also in ways to document and share that story. So, yeah, thank you for the work you guys are doing, and thank you for being here to share. Yeah, big pleasure. Yeah, absolutely.
I like doing. That's why I'm behind the camera.